Beth started out asking you just to talk about road trips. I'm just curious. I'm not, we can do that, but what is a travel tip that you would share? Like you've done not necessarily a road trip, you might have traveled, you might have hitchhiked across Canada, who knows? What's a travel tip that you found useful? Yeah.
To pretend when you're in some unknown place that you're there every day of your life and you're just going to work.
Interesting. Did you all heard that? That's good. Yeah. What are the travel tips?
Walk with a sandwich.
Huh?
Walk with a sandwich.
Pack a snack is
Like,
Pack a snack, exactly. Yeah, that's very smart. What other ones you might come up with?
I was going to say pack water.
Pack water. That's yeah.
Have a plaid. Good plaid.
Okay, that's a good question. How much of a plan to have?
With a map
Yeah, okay.
or an app on your phone or something.
Yeah, okay. No, that's good.
Yeah, so I was going to say, plan carefully, but be prepared to take spontaneous detours.
Yeah. Because life will do that to you, right? It's protect you when you travel. Things won't work out and you have to, I mean, some of you know, Shirley and I were not on a road trip per se, a travel trip, and we did the travel parts with trains in Italy just recently in the month of June. And my travel tip is, it's very ordinary, it's not as sophisticated as the good ones you've got. It's basically travel lightly. Like, you always take more crap than you really need. That's the truth. So I borrowed my daughter's backpack, and so on our travel days, you have 2 free hands, right? That helped. Shirley's back is not great, so I could help with her stuff. And anyway, that's my tip. I mean, all these other ones were good. So we're thinking of travel tips, and because these Psalms, what I want us to think of, these Psalms, we talk Psalms of Ascent, there are 15 of them in the Bible, are really road trip kind of things, right? And I guess I have how many of you, when you travel or take a road trip, do you make a playlist? Antler and Anthony, it's, I don't tend to do that, but if we think of these Psalms of Ascent as a playlist for pilgrims. Now, these Psalms of Ascent, the 15 of them, are they one each for the 15 steps at the temple in Jerusalem? Maybe, maybe not. Are they meant to be used on this pilgrimage? And Beth was talking about them last time we were in church in Large. By pilgrims going up, there were 3 main festivals. You go up to Jerusalem and, songs along the way. Or were they songs that the exiles sung when they came back from Babylon, right? When the whole sort of that nation state of Israel had been blown up and they'd all been exiled into Babylon. Who knows? It's some probably combination of those. But I think the bottom line here is this road trip playlist was helpful for pilgrims back then, and it's helpful for us today, right? As we bumble through our lives and our faith, we all need sort of a playlist that helps us have a good trip on this life. Sounds like Grateful Dead there, but and this word pilgrimage is an interesting word. I mean, you're probably familiar with it, but it's not a common word. And I was just catching up on a bit of the Open Way stuff, and so I listened to Anita's sermon and preached when we were both away. And she began talking about a pilgrimage she'd done locally, walking as part of the truth and reconciliation sort of work in her own life to one of the residential schools in Langley, was it? Langley, yeah. So I mean, this pilgrimage, I hadn't recycled it yet. We happen to be in Padova, which is close to Venezia, Venice, and there's the Basilica of St. Anthony, and there was a little guide. You could do it was basically a pilgrimage destination, who knew? And in the basilica, you go in, there was this little handbook which says, you know, you could do a little pilgrimage in this church. And let me just read what it says. I'm just trying to say pilgrim is a thing today, even though it's not a thing for us. It says, welcome, brother and sister pilgrim. You have reached the house of God, who awaits you here to take care of you. It's kind of sweet. You are in the place made holy by the presence of St. Anthony. That's Padua, Italy. You're about to enter a holy place which is particularly meaningful for the faith. Anyway, so that's pilgrimage. And so if you find this, we're just going to read together Psalm 120. Think of this as a playlist for pilgrims then and now. And what I'll do, it's kind of tricky. I'll read the first one, you read the next verse, and then once we're done, we're done. And just before we do that, let me just read you these words from Italy, the Basilica of St. Anthony. Welcome, brother and sister pilgrim. You have reached the house of God, who awaits you here to take care of you. So let's read. Why don't you stand up and then we can. So I'll do verse 1, you do verse 2, and then we'll just do it like that. In my distress, I cry to the Lord that God may answer me.
Deliver me, O Lord, from lying lips and from a deceitful tongue.
What shall be given to you, and what more shall be done to you, you deceitful tongue?
A warrior's sharp arrows with glowing coals of the broom tree.
Yes. Woe is me that I am an alien in Meshech, that I live among the tents of Kedar.
Too long have I had my dwelling among those who hate peace.
I am for peace, but when I speak, they are for war. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Okay. So I'm just going to go through what I call some travel tips for pilgrims or travelers. You might not think of yourself as a pilgrim, but as we just go through this Psalm of Ascent. So verse 1, you know, in my distress I cry to the Lord. So travel tip number 1 is, for us on this road trip of life and faith, is basically a reality check. The way is not a neutral way. It's hostile. It's not an easy path to go. I mean, in my distress, it doesn't sound like a nice pounding rock and roll road trip song. Like, I'm dating myself, like Tom Cochrane, right? Life is a highway, I'm gonna drive it all night long. No, distress, I mean, it sounds like a slow, wailing kind of guitar solo. A bit like, you know, Dazed and Confused by Led Zeppelin. But minor key, definitely, right? And I just want to set, when we read these, we're just going to dip into these Psalms of Ascent, not do all of them, because then we'd be in 2019 at our rate. Just imagine this. Imagine a Muslim young woman wearing a hijab, living in Canada, traveling to work in suburban Canada. I mean, maybe it's hard for you to imagine yourself as a Muslim young woman. Just think of that person. As she commutes, she knows she looks different. And she's also aware of stories that maybe not everybody's happy that she's in Canada, right? What's in her playlist? What is she using to make it through? I mean, just update it. Imagine her, hijab-wearing young Muslim woman, getting on a SkyTrain, say after a BC Lions football game. It's packed. The blood alcohol content of the SkyTrain is a little higher than normal. And she's aware she's the only one who looks like that, and she feels that people are always looking at her. Maybe some Yahoo fueled by some alcohol-induced courage says something. That reinforces the fact that not everyone is happy that she's in Canada. I'm just painting that. It's not. I'm not wanting to visualize sort of a violent act taking place. But I think as we read these Songs of Ascent, let's, this travel tip number 1, reality check. That's the framework we should have. Because back then, the pilgrim made the trip in a non-neutral, hostile environment. And I think, don't kid yourself, not everybody is happy that you're hanging around with Christians at your open way. No. There's a subtle, we don't get beaten up for being Christians in Canada, but, people respect, might not say it to your face, but they probably believe that religion is by and large one of the chief culprits with what's wrong in the world. And they wish you weren't one or weren't hanging out with one. So, just a reality check. Distress. It's not a neutral environment we're walking, la 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 la, flutes playing, Italy, lovely food, eating outside. So, travel tip number 2, when I cry to the Lord that God may answer me. It's interesting. Travel tip for us pilgrims on this road trip of life and faith is this tip has to do with expectation. Notice in this translation, it doesn't say, I cried to the Lord in my distress and God answered me. But there's this expectation that God is present in this somehow, right? God is present in this. When things are sideways, so the pilgrim is saying, okay, I'm making this trip in this hostile environment, but I'm going to make it, even though maybe I don't totally believe it or feel it, that God is somehow present with me here. It's amazing when you live like that, the difference it makes. Very trivial example. So on this trip we flew in and out of Zurich. So on our first train trip in Switzerland, right, it's a long flight, you're not at your best. The train gets cancelled. Now, if a train is late in Switzerland, I think they have a public inquiry. A train getting cancelled, it's like, whoa, something's terrible. Anyway, so you're not in the best of conditions, and it's your first trip. It's tempting to make more of just no train than it should be, right? Be prepared for surprises. Plan, be prepared for surprises. But living with the expectation, God is in this somewhere. For us, what it turned out to be? There's a Danish couple who happened to be going to the same place. And she could be texting her sister who lived in Switzerland, who had the app, the train app, and could tell us what trains we could take to get to the place we wanted to go. You might just say it's coincidence, but I think living with the expectation, God is in this somewhere. I just encourage you, when life goes sideways, or even when life doesn't go sideways, if we live more with this expectation, God is in this somewhere. I'm going to see something here that I didn't expect. Anyway, here, verse 2 now. Who hasn't said this? Deliver me, O Lord, from lying lips and a deceitful tongue. Does it sound familiar? It's like at least 3,000 years old. Right? I will not name the orange overlord to the south, President number 45, but people like him, right? You might have heard as a kid, sticks and stones may break your bones, but words will never hurt you. Is that familiar to anybody? Yeah. Well, so it's true, but it's also not true. Words hurt, right? Words are destructive. And Psalms are full of that. They have these images. Let me just read one. It's here, but Psalm 64, it says, they whet their tongues like swords and aim bitter words like arrows. Good image, right? That's what words do. So travel tip number 3 is speech, really. Words actually matter. Words matter, believe it or not. Rappers know that. Songwriters know it. Authors know it. Preachers should know it. We all know it. Words actually matter. Sure, they maybe not break your bones, but they can do stuff. And just 2 reminders, I think, about this travel tip about the words and it uses the tongue and the lips is, one is just, this is not a new thing, folks. Lying lips, deceitful tongues has been around for a long time. That doesn't make it right. That's a reality. And the second tip, I think, the second implication of this, I think, is when we live in that culture where I could pan social media, right? Where the filter on how people behave is not really that great. It can be very tempting to get sucked into that little rabbit hole yourself, right? And forget that words, they're very easy to fire like an arrow, but you can never take them back. Watch out, words matter. One practical thing I do, if you feel you have to communicate something either verbally or with an email or whatever, write it down, sleep on it, and in the morning look at it and say, I don't think I'm going to send that arrow. It was good to get it out of my system, but that's really not going to be that helpful. It's a way of, managing, rather than pressing send. Or I don't even use Twitter, but I guess it's even easier there. So here we go. Let's carry on here. What more shall be given to you, and what more shall be done for you, you deceitful tongue? Oh, the desire for payback. A warrior's sharp arrows with glowing coals of the broom tree. There's something sweet about the desire for payback, for liars and deceivers, right? Yes, bring it on. Swords, hot broom coals for those lying bastards. Right? Or is it just me? It's just me? There's something sweet about plotting revenge and wanting to do payback. But I think here's where this tip number 4, you'll notice if you read this very, and I think 2 things about this. If it's really true that God ultimately is going to do the payback, and I say thank God that God's in charge of that, not me. Then I think very practically you have to think, okay, if that's true, how much energy should I spend plotting and executing payback? Because as we all know, that's a never-ending sinkhole. It will take you into places, it will actually make you a worse version of yourself. Watch out. Be careful how much is in your budget for payback. Otherwise it will take over your whole life. And if it's ultimately not something I'm responsible for, and it's very hard to do that, right? Oh, hot coals of the broom tree, bring it on. No, let that go. The warrior's going to do it. What can I replace it with? And I've alluded to the orange overlord to the south, right? Sometimes when I find myself, okay, let's forget it, imagining things, I can force myself to actually pray that for this person, President number 45, that this deep insecurity and fear that lies behind a lot of this stuff, that something will happen in his interaction with people that will wear it away. You know what I'm saying? Replacing that energy of our plotting and desire for payback with something more in the direction of St. Benedict's, as we've sung, let peace be your quest and aim. I'll come back to that. Anyway, verse 5 and 6, we'll just finish this up with 2 more tips. Woe is me that I am an alien in Meshach, that I must live amongst the tents of Kedar. Too long I have had my dwelling among those who hate peace. Now, Meshach, they say, is probably some place between the Black and Caspian Sea. Tents of Kedar, a nomadic Arabic tribe. It's not like the writer was necessarily there, but metaphorically, he realized, I'm a resident alien in a strange place where I don't fit in. My values are not their values, right? So travel tip number 5 for us pilgrims on this journey of life and faith is this. The power of naming your situation. If it sucks, name it that it sucks. Right? That's what he says here. If it's not fair, name it, it's not fair. If it's painful, name it. You might say, oh, well, that's just explaining the way. Practical example. Beth and I, in one of our staff meetings, we're just talking about the fact, well, it's kind of fun to be involved in a church startup. there's a side to it that's just plain hard work, right? Don't kid yourself. Name it. Deciding to do this, the numbers are small, summer, it comes and goes, numbers even smaller. And, for us, it was just very helpful, just to name it, call it what it is. And that's a great travel tip, naming the situation. So in your life's circumstances, don't sugarcoat your situation. If it sucks, say, God, this sucks. It's unfair, say, God, this is unfair. There is power in naming things for what they really are. And finally, verse 7, right? I'm for peace, but when I speak, they are for war. And I guess we've been singing about it, but that's a reminder to us as pilgrims on this bumpy road of life and faith, that our orientation really is for well-being, for thriving, for wholeness, for shalom, for peace. Not conflict, not war. And our leader, the Prince of Peace, Jesus says, it's his main intention, says, I've come that you might have life and have it abundantly. Thriving, well-being, wholesomeness, shalom, peace, right? And Shirley found this card, the Rule of St. Benedict, says it, let peace be your quest. And it's a good reminder to us. Our orientation is for peace, not war. So, may God help each one of us as we bumble through our lives and our faith to put some of these travel tips into practice so that we have a fuller, richer life. Glory be to God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be.